Welcome to A Friend of Mine, a series of conversations with some incredible and inspiring women in business from regional and rural Australia. I'm Kimberley Furness, your host and the founder and editor of Oak Magazine, and I cannot wait to introduce you to some amazing female entrepreneurs who will share with you their experience and knowledge of what it takes to start, grow and scale a successful business. So let me introduce you to A Friend of Mine. This special episode was recorded live for the National Farmers Federation through its Women in Agriculture Leadership Facebook group. We give some tough topics visibility through our conversation on leadership, careers, motherhood, and everything in between.
Hello, and welcome to a very special Women in Agriculture Leadership live interview. I'm Stacey Davidson from the National Farmers Federation Media and Communications team. We're so happy to have you all here today. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge the owners of the land from which we all come from today. I'd also like to say this is being recorded. The recording will be made available to the Facebook group, and I'm also really excited to say we'll appear on A Friend of Mine podcast by Oak Magazine, which is the perfect segue to our very special guest host, Kimberley Furness. Hi, Kimberley.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So welcome. Kimberley is the founder and editor of print publication Oak Magazine. She's a Bendigo local and has long been a cheerleader for rural and regional women and their endeavours. After taking out the title of this year's Rural Women's Award for Victoria and national runner-up, congratulations, she has learned to back herself and be her own cheerleader. In 2017, the mother of four launched Oak Magazine in just 6 weeks from concept to print. Oak shares the stories of women in business across regional and rural Australia and is a community ecosystem of print, digital, events and audio, including not one, but 2 podcasts and a new podcast van to travel around Australia. What's very special about what Kimberley has done is she has created a community of like-minded women, a community that feels safe and isn't tainted by tall poppy. Rather, it feels celebratory, inclusive and inspiring, and I encourage everyone to check it out. Today, Kimberley is going to chat with Pru Cook in a very special interview for our group. Hi, Pru, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, it's very great to be here.
Pru is a graduate from the National Farmers Federation Diversity in Agriculture Leadership Program. Pru started her own business, Nine Creeks Consulting in Dimboola in 2020 in the early stages of the pandemic and just 7 months after the birth of her first child. While Pru admits starting a business was absolutely terrifying, it was the only way she could have the flexibility she needed to be a mum in a regional area without making big sacrifices to her career. Before we kick off, I have to say a big shout out to the many partners who make the diversity program and this page possible. There are too many to mention, but they do share a common goal. That is to increase gender diversity within the leadership ranks of their industry. It's going to be an interesting chat today as well. Kimberley and Pru share common ground. Their experiences, approaches, and how they make things work are quite different. If you have any questions for them, please pop them in the chat. Before I hand the reins over to you, Kimberley, I want to ask you if you can tell us a little bit about your situation. You have this incredible multifaceted business, but with that comes travel, deadlines, and long hours. And on top of that, you're a mum to 4 kids. What are some of the key ingredients for you to making all of this happen? And can you tell us, do you even get work-life balance?
Look, it's so interesting that I do get asked so often, so how do you make it work? How do you juggle it all? And I don't do it on my own. I think that really is the answer. I have this incredible partner at home who pretty much walks around and picks up all my drop balls, makes lunch boxes, signs permission slips, cooks tea, just so that I can actually walk out that door focused on what I have to do and not worry about what's happening at home or, if someone has odd socks on. And just fulfill my passion. I think that's the thing, and feel on purpose, because, and in saying this has taken me a long time to get to this point, and it wasn't always the case, especially when we had our first, which was almost 16 years ago. But yeah, I'm just so grateful for that. And in terms of balance, like, I've watched lots of Netflix. I've binge shows all the time. I still read books. That, I suppose, for me is my wind down time. I mean, honestly, I could probably spend that a lot better, going for a run, walking, going for the gym. But, it's all about finding something that works for you. And for me, that I just can switch off completely, lose myself in a book or a show, or even going to the cinemas, because I can't get on my phone. And maybe that's the whole point, isn't it? Being, I suppose, removed from our phone removes us from all these expectations and having to get back to people and all these, little concerns that turn into big problems. So I think that's, I don't know if I've got the right balance yet, Stacey, but yeah, I'm working at it.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you've got to find what's right for you. It's no two people are the same. So I also understand in your house, you're the main breadwinner. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so I was certainly the main breadwinner when it came to probably our second and third especially. When I had my first, I realised, to be honest, my husband realised before I did, that I'm just not great at staying home looking after a baby. It's just not good for my mental health. I just kept feeling like I'm not doing enough. I'm not achieving enough. I'm losing my spot in the workforce as well. So it just so happened that my husband wanted to go back to uni and study to be a teacher. And yeah, it seemed like the perfect fit for us to role reverse. So he sort of did all that. He was the parent taking the kids along to uni and sitting there in class while they're, tapping on a fish tank and running up and down the aisle. Whereas, I was the main breadwinner. So I was able to get my foot back in the door into corporate comms and marketing. So I have a journalism background, and then did beauty therapy, and then had to work my way back in and up. And with that, I've been able to do it without the mum guilt, but my gosh, there were so many times I'd get a phone call saying, hey, are you coming home anytime soon? I'm like, yeah, I've just got this one more thing to do. And I think the worst memory I have looking back is getting a phone call to say, it's our third daughter's birthday. Just wondering if you picked up that cake today. And I'm like, oh my God, I totally didn't get to that. And I was running late anyway. So it was a quick trip to the supermarket, a bucket of ice cream, lollies and some candles, and took it home. And I think it's one of our best birthday cakes. It's sort of a tradition now that we just have ice cream with heaps of lollies. But yeah, there was a lot of pressure on me for that. There's a lot of, you have to put up with a lot of people looking in and giving commentary on what type of parent you are, because you're not that stay-at-home parent. And it's so interesting. We start with, I love my children, but I just had to go back to work for my own mental health. Like, we all love our children. I don't know why we start with that, that little segue into it. But yeah, we're both full-time workers now, and probably, look, he does most of the work. But yeah, it works for us now.
Yeah, great. Oh, thanks for sharing that. And I think we could do a whole webinar on mum guilt and that topic.
Absolutely.
When organising this webinar, Kimberley, you shared with us, and you've sort of touched on it just before, you had postpartum depression. And I know there'd be many women out there who appreciate how hard that is to share. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looked like for you and what you learnt from it?
Yeah, look, it's probably not something I talk a lot about, to be honest. I think those who know me probably haven't heard me talk about it at all. It's something we've kept really tight in the circle, and there is no reason for that, to be honest. It's probably more of a personal reason. But for us, it was with our first. We were living in Melbourne. I'm from Bendigo. So we were living in the city. You feel isolation anywhere. I know that we say, and look, I do this through the mag, that isolation is definitely most felt by those living in, rural and remote areas, but it's for anyone removed from their community. So I didn't have my community around me when I was in Melbourne. My husband was working as a landscape gardener at the time on the other side of the city. So he was gone from 5 till 7 every day. And I'd had a cesarean as well. So I couldn't get out do what I wanted to do. And my poor husband, he come home one day and I just wasn't there. I'd packed up my stuff and gone back to Bendigo. I could not do it anymore. And so we'd sort of started, I mean, he realized it before I did, that, I wasn't coping in that situation. And so, that was me going back to work full time, putting our youngest into family daycare. He's fine. He's smart. He was looked after. I mean, do you know, that's all the narrative you get. You know, it's not great to put our kids in full time, should be staying at home with them and looking after them. But honestly, it was the best thing that worked for me. And I know this sounds selfish, but honestly, we have to look after ourselves to be able to look after, you know, our whole family unit and be a really strong unit. So as it came to the next two, we obviously knew that I sort of went back at that 3-month mark. And when it come to our fourth, though, I was working for myself. I didn't suffer any postnatal. I was just in a really good place. And I don't know if that's because I had purpose. You know, I'd had Oakley and I was able to go straight back into what I do and fit it in, have that flexibility to, you know, to get up and work on something and create some social media posts and help build a website for a client. And that's sort of what's worked for us. But, you know, I think more and more we're starting to talk more openly about it. I think we need to, absolutely. And hopefully by sharing, you know, your story, you're helping someone else feel a little less alone and to know that, they're not the only one.
Yeah, absolutely. And do appreciate you talking about that with us today. So no, it's not easy. So, and I think emotional health, mental health, like it is a learning curve in life and it can change on our situations and circumstances. So, again, thank you. And I'm now going to hand over to you and Pru to have a chat. So over to you.
Lovely. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for having me as a host. It's such a good opportunity to talk live again. I mean, I haven't done this for a while. This used to just be, in and out every day, didn't it, during the last 2 years? But before we do start, I would like to acknowledge the Dja Dja Wurrung people, who are the traditional owners of the land on which I'm working on today. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Now, it was actually only last week that I came across an article in a newsletter in my inbox talking about a study into pregnant women still being demoted, sacked, and discriminated against. And I understand why so many women are hesitant to maybe start a family or, you know, thinking about their career, like how does this fit in with career? When's the right time? Because, you know, we're worried on how do we hold on to where we are on that ladder. Pru, you've experienced this firsthand. Like I was reading the article and obviously from our chat previously, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is exactly what's happened to Pru. That was a catalyst for you starting your own business. Do you want to talk us through how you came to start your own business because the workplace that you were in didn't provide that flexibility?
Yeah, thanks, Kimberley. And look, I sort of, you have that, get established in your career before you have kids, and that will make it easier to get back in. And you're like, well, I did that and it didn't really work. So, but, I had, when I got pregnant, was having some conversations and, just sort of got this vibe, a bit of a vibe that, they weren't looking to fill a placement, but that they might be looking to replace me. And, was speaking to a fellow senior manager and they said, oh, you've got to remember, Pru, that women here go on maternity leave and they don't come back. And, just before my daughter was born premature and just before that happened, there was some PDs and none of them were advertised as a maternity leave position. And, sitting there in hospital with just this, and I asked a question about it and I never got an answer as to what that meant. So I sort of had the vibe that, things weren't going to be easy. And so I'm sitting there early on going, what does this mean? And then I started having some return to work conversations and they had some tasks, some projects that they wanted me to do, but I couldn't see that there was a clear pathway and that they considered me getting back to the role or an equivalent role to what I'd been in. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to slog that out. And so I was like, I'd always thought that one day I'd like to have a crack at my own business, but I certainly didn't want it to be with a 7-month-old. And I certainly didn't want it to be early in the pandemic. So I reached out to my network and I called a couple of people and said, is this a stupid idea? And they all said, nope, agriculture is great right now. And you'll be very employable. And within a short period of time, all three of them reached back out and said, we've got work for you. When are you starting? Which gave me that little confidence that I needed. And, it was really interesting when I did resign, having a conversation with someone who was there that said, we read it a bit wrong. What you're looking for is a career and not a job. And I'm like, I thought that was very apparent with me all the way through. And, I don't think it was malicious. I think it was just perception. It's just, sort of this ingrained thing that goes through, and, we're not necessarily challenged on it. And the thing that frustrates me still to this day is that no one actually asked me. We just make, they're like, oh, yep, they're going to want to step back. That's what they're going to want to do. And that's the bit that really frustrates me.
Oh, absolutely. There is this maternal wall that exists within, and I say in inverted commas, in corporate, and it does, for women, it impacts our ability to, get a promotion, get a pay rise, even get hired. Have you got any thoughts on, and not that we're looking, there's not a one solution. I really don't think there's this magic little pill that is going to solve it all. But how do we make this easier? How do we make it better so that going out and creating your own business is the only solution? There has to be another way that we make it easier for women to finish at, 10 years experience, have 12 weeks off, and come back in at 10 years experience, because it feels like we come back in as someone that's never worked in that industry before.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about it because, we've got this really brilliant network of mums in the Wimmera where I'm based who run their own businesses. For the most part, their businesses are in the profession and doing, the same work that they were doing in their previous roles. In many instances, they're actually contracting back to the organisations that they worked for. Yet, and then you've got these organisations crying out for, competent senior leadership. I mean, riddle me this. It's sort of, and these women are still doing the exact same work at a really high level quality. They might just be doing it in an evening or a weekend. And I'm hoping that COVID is sort of resetting that we can work when, where, and how we like and still be productive. But there's a bit of a way to go. And I think a lot of it comes down to representation, and it's not just having one woman on a board or a committee or senior leadership, but it's having a number of them and being able to put your hand up and go, hey, this is the situation for us. But we're incredibly competent. This network of women that I work with, we all talk about sharing overflow work, and everyone's always at capacity, and most of these women I would reach out to because I know they'll do a stellar job and they'll do it on time and it'll be fantastic. So I think it's we've got to be able to tell our stories and go, this is the case for us. But hey, look, the quality of the work, the fact that we're all getting work within our businesses, it's just this, this underlying perception that, we're not going to be available, that sort of pervades. And I think that's setting us up. I've got a fabulous, I sit on the GRDC Southern Regional Panel, and we've just been on a spring tour, and where there's 4 women on that panel out of a panel of 10. And we've just been on a spring tour, and one of my fellow panelists, Lou Flor from Lamoureux, she brings her baby, and it's the second baby that she's had that she's now brought along on spring tour and panel meetings. She's in the boardroom, she's breastfeeding, she'll step out. Is she there 100% of the time? No. But for when she is there and when she's able to contribute, it's fantastic. And, we're speaking to a former panelist who many years ago was the only female on the panel. And, it said that, the other panelists would be like, well, we don't think that's an issue because it wasn't their experience. So we've got to change perception. And I think that comes from visibility and from telling our stories and go, actually, no, this isn't good enough. I'm good at what I do. I get it done. I just need a little bit of flexibility, and I don't want to do it in a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday setting.
Absolutely. Visibility, storytelling, my two favorite keywords that I have spoken about so much over my AgriFutures Rural Women's Award journey. But you kept mentioning network, and I think that's a really important part of our chat today. So obviously your network has definitely helped you start a business, okay? So you had these people around you that you could really connect into quite quickly. How do you cultivate and nurture your network?
Good question. I mean, that's my key advice to anyone starting a business, is make sure that you've got the networks to be able to do it. So it's, reaching out regularly. It's, keeping on top of the networks that I have. And that's, doing a good job, being really responsive, but taking time to have, wide ranging questions. What am I working on? What are you working on? And make sure there's a social element in there as well too. Like, the three people that I sort of reached out to initially, I would consider them friends as well as clients and colleagues. So I think that's something that's particularly important in a regional setting is, you've got to have a social element to the networks that you have as well too. In terms of, cultivating new networks since I've been on board, again, so much of it is word of mouth. So that's where, doing what I'll say I'll do is really, really important for me. But also, trying more and more to be really authentic in terms of talking about the human side of things, as well as, the agricultural and the productive and the, side of things as well too, is, really, the work that I do is in agricultural extension and practice change. And all of this comes back down to human behaviour and our values. Trying to be really real about, not just the work that you do, but who you are as a person, and, the impact of your work on a regional community, as well as, specifically agriculture, I think is really important in, getting people to consider things as a whole of system.
Yeah, the whole piece needs us to be more vocal and really sit within our values. So I think, say no when something doesn't fit with you or doesn't align with your values. My gosh, I've got so many examples of that recently, especially, being offered some media and it did not fit with who I am or who my business is and what we're trying to do. So Oak is trying to have really courageous conversations, and Pru, you're such a great example of that. And not about, what I wear and what perfume and, where are my earrings from or anything like that. It takes a lot to go back and say, well, actually, this doesn't align with me and my business values. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to decline. I'm really grateful. Now they're going to come back and say, but it's great brand awareness and it's great exposure, So it's really hard. Like, this is the thing. If we think leadership's easy, it's not. It's going to have to, we need to step up. We need to use our voices. And when we see someone else doing it, it makes it easier for that next person. Are you using platforms like LinkedIn or, Facebook or Instagram or even Twitter? I must admit I'm not on Twitter much, but like, where are you building that network? Are you having really courageous conversations on any of those platforms?
To be honest, Kimberley, we're not doing any marketing at the moment, purely because I'm at capacity with when we can't take on any new work until next year. And so, when I sit down, I hustle and I sit down and go, this is the work that I'm going to get done. I try to work 3 days a week. I've got 2 days with my daughter, and, that time is really important and precious to me. So in terms of seeking new work at the moment, I'm letting it happen organically, and I'm sort of working through a referral system. Like, if someone that I've never met with before comes to me, I'm like, who recommended you recommended you to me, just so that I can understand where they're coming from and how we might be able to work together, and whether they're gonna get how I do things. In a previous life, I was a social media manager at the Grains Research and Development Corporation. I was the first person that did social media for them. So my life was entirely social media at that time, and it was sort of managing farmer conversations. And when you've got the time difference in WA, like, I just felt that I was it was there all the time. And when I sort of stepped away from that role, social media is something that I try not to be too big on. I think, it's something that, my partner who I brought into the business with a couple of months ago now, we're like, yeah, we'll get there one day. But for the workload that we've got on at the moment, it's not a priority.
Isn't that, I tried to tag you in everything. I couldn't. So there you go.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry at all. Social media is such a drain. It's, as I said, it's the one thing where I can put my phone away if I'm reading, watching TV or at the cinemas, because it's it's full on. But for me, that's that connection piece and building community. The fact that you have launched your business really only recently, like you're still in startup phase, if you don't mind me saying that, that's in a good way. But, you're fully booked. Incredible. How does that feel for you? And is there a temptation to go outside those 3 days? How do you keep yourself in those 3 days?
There's not actually, and I've been really strict on that, and I'm not sure I'll be able to articulate how I do that, but I think, starting my own business, I do my best work first up in the day. Like I will very, very rarely work at night because I'm not happy with the quality of anything I do at work. But like up until 3 o'clock, I used to find when I was in corporates, setting, you'd get to 3 o'clock and you just be there going, oh, I'm not feeling efficient. So now, I get to that 3 o'clock and like, cool, I'm going to draw a line through that. And I'm pretty conscious about finding time for myself as well too. So my partner and I, we've sat down and gone, this is what we need to make. This is where we'd like to get to. But there, one of the joys for us in terms of living, regionally, and we bought our house here ages ago. The Wimmera has some of the cheapest housing in Victoria. There's not the need to hustle from a financial perspective. And our decision to have our daughter Millie when we did was also, to have that financial security that, if I needed to take longer off, money wasn't the barrier. And, I've had so many women reach out to me who are like, I'd love to start my own business. And some of them have mortgages in capital cities. And the money question is a lot more challenging for them. But yeah, for me, I'm only going to have the one kid. I really, really want to maximize that time with it. They say that it goes so quickly. She's 2.5 now, and absolutely it's flying by like that. So I really love and cherish those Wednesdays and Fridays. When my partner started working with me, I'm like, oh yeah, we can split those days. But I actually really struggled to flip from work mode to mum mode, and it wasn't working for me and it wasn't working for Millie. So, I'm getting pretty strict at it and getting very good at saying no through running my own business too. But not advertising that we're working also helps in terms of managing expectation.
I think the hardest thing is to say no. It's something I think we all learn and we all ask each other, like, how do you actually say no? And especially with business, because for some of us, to say no is to say no to money. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh gosh, I'm going to lose that contract. Like you just chase the money in the end. Like you want to earn more so that with this big high goal of having a lifestyle that, affords you to have time off. But I love how you've now gone, no, these are as you said, this is how much we need. That fits into 3 days. Let's lock it in. Like I'm taking something of that away today and going, okay, I need to get more strict.
And look, and my partner as well too, I've sort of seen quite a shift in him since he's come on board as well. He'll take the dog out for a walk every morning. I bought the dog for him years ago because, he said, I want to get a dog and take it walking. And I've done all the work walking up until he started, working for me. And it's just, relieving that pressure of expectation that you have to sit down at your desk at 9 and work till 5 and go, this is what I need to do now, and I'm going to get it done. Like, I think it's been quite freeing for both of us to have that flexibility. And, I've had some really great mentors who I've worked for previously who have been, I don't care what your hours are, as long as the quality of the job is good. And that's where we're sitting in, is that, let's do really high quality work, but if we can, the ideal goal would be to sort of, do the 4-day work week. We'll sort of, working out how that looks like. But that's sort of the goal. I think that'd suit me nicely.
Absolutely. I'd love to know that all those who are watching us live or even listening to the podcast, let us know, when is your best work hour? When do you operate best? Because Pru, I'm totally opposite to you. And I think this comes from having worked in a newspaper on a sub-editing desk where you start at 2:00 in the afternoon. And it's also, I think, where my office is at home. So the sun in the morning is on the other side. I don't get it. But in the afternoon, it comes in. The office gets warm. It's got this nice feel. So I'm actually the most productive from 3:00 onwards. I'm useless during the day. But this is it, isn't it? It's all about the flexibility of having our own business and creating what works for us. Change of pace. As you mentioned, you are from the Wimmera. You're from a farm as well. Now, a few years ago, before the birth of your daughter, before you launched your business, you had another, I suppose, a really big moment in your life that obviously, changes everything, to be honest. You lost your dad to cancer. Can you tell me a little bit about, and sorry to take you back to that time, but tell me a little bit about what impact that had on you and maybe what you wish you had have done while he was around in terms of, conversations and succession planning.
Yeah, and look, I'm happy to talk about it, but it's taken a long time. As we started this off, is that, talking about we've got to give things visibility, and I think that means sometimes we have to get comfortable with sharing uncomfortable stories. So this was back in 2016. I'd always really wanted to be a farmer. And, had grown up on the farm and, spent as much time as I could, I had ponies and, when you grow up on the farm, it's really embedded in you, in such a huge part of your childhood and who you are and how you interact with the world. And, agriculture was, never something that was suggested to me as a career. It was never something that, Dad thought that I should get into. My careers teacher never suggested it to me. I really came into it accidentally. I was 17 when I finished year 12 and couldn't drive off into the sunset like I planned to. And I asked Dad if he'd let me drive the header for him. And he thankfully said yes. And then that just sort of really started my love affair with agriculture. Is from there, anytime I was home from uni, I'd be working on the farm. I did an ag science degree. It's sort of, again, it didn't seem like the farm was an option that was open to me. And it took me a little while to get to the point where I'm like, maybe I could be on the family farm. But, and I tried to have some of those conversations with Dad, but probably wasn't brave enough to do it and probably wasn't brave enough to ask the hard question, is it that, is this not an avenue that's open to me because I'm female? I really wish that I'd had that conversation now because, it might have challenged something and maybe had a different outcome. Because again, to speak about this, it's not, I don't think it was nothing malicious on Dad's part. And for me, I read a fabulous article years ago in The Age, which was about daughter succession, and that we just know, they're like, nobody wants to go on the record to talk about this because it looks like you're speaking, ill of your family, or in many instances, and it was potentially that, some of the, secondhand information I got was, it looks like a money grab. This was before land prices were the way they were as well too. But I think, I've got to be open in having these conversations that, I really would have loved to have been a farmer. And it wasn't an option that was open to me. And you're seeing that shift now. And, there was a fabulous webinar last week for GRDC Farm Business Updates, which was looking at the topic of daughter succession. So the dynamics around that are changing. But, that whole, after Dad died, so he had a very short, it was 6 weeks from his diagnosis to his death with lung cancer, and I stepped dropped back to part-time in my job and was helping my brother on the farm, and, was really loving that. He was only 24 at the time, and, but realised that I needed to step away from the farm. And that last day, I remember I was driving around checking a mob of sheep and just tears streaming down my face. God, and it's the first and only time in my life that, I wish I'd been a bloke.
Yeah.
So, that had a really profound effect on how I saw myself and how I saw my relationship with my father. And, I love him very much. And I wish that, perhaps I'd been braver enough early on to have a really open and honest conversation around, can I be on the farm? What do I need to do to make that happen? And if not, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of dealing with grief, was there something that you did to help you through that process?
Well, the first thing I did was thought that if I work really, really, really hard, on the farm and in my job, I'll be able to show everyone that I should be on the farm. Yeah. And so all I did was just hit rock bottom. So that was the turning point to get professional help. And I mean, that's been one of the best things that I've ever done in my life. That was, obviously after my first session, she's like, you're going to need to come back. But, you're justified in being angry. And if you're not angry, you should be angry. And so, got to spend time with her. First, you unpick the grief, in terms of, the trauma of Dad's death itself. And then you unpick, the farm, because that adds this whole other layer of complexity. And then, as you progressively got on top of that, I was, seeing my psychologist for quite a long time, is that you ended up getting on top of lots of other stuff that had sort of been, persisting even before then. So, a highly, highly stressed and anxious person, particularly in a workplace setting prior to all of the work that I did with my psychologist. And now that I've got on top of that, I was sat on a panel for a bunch of agricultural master's students a couple of months back, and like, what's some career advice that you'd love to give your younger self? And mine was to get on top of my mental health earlier, because if I'd been able to remove that weight of other people's expectation, and I'd been able to have some of the mantras that my psychologist has given me that I still use, almost weekly for some of them. I could have, been a happier person earlier. And, like doing that work was really hard. Like, getting on top of your mental health is really, really hard work. But if you're going to expend hard work somewhere, it's, feeling better about yourself and, feeling happier is a pretty good place to be doing hard work.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's on my to-do list. This is, I think we laughed about this before. I've got friends who see psychologists. I think I have my husband telling me, you need to go and talk to someone. And it's like, I'll put it on my to-do list, and it's getting a little higher this year. I might tick it off, but you're right. We need to prioritize our own emotional and mental well-being. Now, we live in small country towns where there is, I think, 2 degrees of separation between everyone. Do you find it harder to seek help in that sense because it's such a small community? Like, is there ever that worry that, oh my God, people are going to know that, I'm seeing a psychologist or a therapist?
So again, for me going, all right, we've got to normalize this stuff. I'm just, I've just told, whoever's watching in from wherever, that this is something that I've done. And I've been really, really open with my family and, and friends and basically anyone really. So they'll be like, yep, drop in casually that, oh yeah, my psychologist says, because I think we do need to normalize it, and my partner, he's, experienced a family trauma when he was quite young, and so became familiar with, seeking help at a very early age. And he's like, you go to a doctor to get a health checkup, why not do the same for your mind? It's the same thing. So I think we do need to normalize it, but then you're right. The trouble that we run into in regional areas is access, and, it can be quite expensive. I know I reached out through a GP to, see if I could get a mental health plan. And they're like, well, it could affect your life insurance premiums if you want to go through this. And I think I've since been told that perhaps wasn't the correct advice. I'm not sure. So I ended up paying for it myself, but that was, it's not a cheap venture if you do it that way. And then you've got to get in. And I think COVID sort of, it may have made things easier in terms of you can seek help via, online mechanisms, but, everybody's mental health has been so challenged that availability has, been diminished. And I've got a very good friend who has started her own business post-children as well too, as a clinical psychologist, and she specialises in children. The minute she opened her business, she had to close her books within 2 weeks because that was they were at capacity. So, it's all very good to say, reach out and ask for help, but you've got to be able to, one, access it and two, afford it. So that's something we need to get better at.
We do. And the only good thing coming from it is that, and I don't know if you agree, but women are getting better at seeking help and talking openly about it. As you said, there's so many friends that just drop into conversation now. Yeah, I was speaking to my therapist or I was speaking to my psychologist. And I think for me, my kids 16, 14, 13, 6, but for them to hear us speak about seeing a psychologist and normalizing it is so important for them as well. I want to make sure that I want to make sure that stigma's broken down for them, and there's nothing wrong with them going to talk to someone from it.
And we see that out in business all the time, it's like, you've got an accountant and a lawyer who, you go and you're looking for independent advice. A psychologist is doing that in terms of, reframing, it's a really good business investment in terms of, managing, being able to get on top of your anxiety and, it's a really good investment in my business to be able to think cohesively and not be frazzled all the time.
Absolutely. And speaking of such, again, I'd seen a little study being done. I think it was by Circle In, to be honest. They're an Australian-based company. Have a look at them. They're on LinkedIn, quite big. But they were just saying that small business owners in particular are taking on that role because people are being more open about the problems that they're having, whether that's domestic violence, mental health, fertility issues, all of that. That's discuss more openly in a workplace. And from that, the small business owners, medium to small business owners are having to shoulder that responsibility and not sure how to use it, how to deal with that themselves. So, it's just this domino effect, isn't it? We all need that access.
Yeah, I do some work around improving communication between generations on family farms, which is obviously, heavily based on my own experience and, getting better at communications. And you have agronomists who are spending, so much time in utes with cars driving around giving advice on crops, and they're like, we're there to make some some fertilizer recommendations, and next thing we're supporting the emotional side of things. And you've got to equip people better to be able to respond to those, when people open up. How can you not shut that down? And it's it can be really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Maybe there's some resources somewhere out there. I'm sure, Stacey and the team will find something for us to maybe drop in a comment later on in another day that we can, look and see how we can support other people and each other and what there is out there.
I'm really loving really loving the you're seeing a lot of mental first aid courses as well too, which a lot of organisations are running, which I think is really valuable to be able to recognise that, that's just as important in rural areas as treating a snake bite. So.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I think for so long, like how I've worked my way through corporate is you compartmentalize everything. So whatever's happening at home does not come to the workplace. I've just got this uncanny ability to be able to, whatever's happening, whether it's daycare drop-off, school drop-off, to sit in that car and the 5 minutes it takes me to get to work or wherever, it is all boxed back up, pushed to the side, and it's got this smile on your face. How was your morning? It was great. Thank you. It's fine. There's been some big moments in my life, and I don't think my workplaces were ever aware of those, because there was that stigma of, well, yeah, you don't bring personal into work. Whereas again, small business, we're starting our own businesses. We have our own rule book, which is absolutely incredible. And we work things the way we want them and what works for us and what's better for everyone too. Now, let's talk leadership. So you obviously had an amazing career path, and then opened your own business, but also still been able to weave back in leadership into what you do, which I love. So you were National Farmers Federation, part of their cohort last year for Diversity in Agriculture Leadership Program. I actually want to touch on that program. Tell me a little bit about it and what you got from it.
Yeah, so it was such a valuable program to be involved with. It was very touch and go with COVID at the time. And I think regional Victoria came out of lockdown maybe the day before the retreat in Canberra. And so I decided to drive instead of fly, which was a 9-hour drive. That retreat was so incredibly valuable, and it's still certainly something that I use to this day. Only a couple of weeks ago, I was meeting with a local MP to talk about a project that I'm on, and remembering we did a workshop with Kathy McGowan about engaging in the political process. So we're sort of able to refer back to my notes and go, right, this is what we need to be able to do to prepare to go into this meeting and to be able to have influence. So, in terms of, with your business, in terms of coming up with what your elevator pitch and, talking about who you are as a person and, what other people, articulating your values has all been really, really, really fantastic. It was just such a fantastic program. What I really loved about it as well too was it was so friendly from a working mum's perspective. You see so many leadership programs that are, year long, and you have to take weeks out at a time. There's a huge amount of preparation that goes into it. This was, a couple of days retreat. You had the mentoring element in the middle, which, you could fit that in a time that worked for you. And then, you had, and again, I think that was online at the end, but, a wrap up. So it was 3 months, never more than a couple of days time with just that retreat at the start. It was, Millie, would have been 18 months old or so at the time. So it just was really accessible to be able to go, yep, this is something that has been designed to ensure that, women with young children who need to have their perspectives put forward to be able to build that. So, yeah, it was just really fantastic from that aspect as well too.
That's brilliant. In terms of leadership, are you on board? Are you doing more of it? What does that look like today in your business?
Yeah, so I've just within the last couple of days been announced as the Deputy Chair of the GRDC Regional Southern Panel. So sat on that panel for 2 years and have stepped up into the deputy role now, which is fantastic. And earlier this year, I was also the Deputy Chair of the Regional Development Australia Grampians Committee, but stepped off that. Again, it's sort of, trying to balance, the project work, the learning to say no to stuff as well too, and understanding when it's time to move on for something. So we're sort of looking to spend a little bit more time in this GRDC role, and so that's something that I'm very excited about. Really, again, sort of making sure that the human elements are considered, and certainly interested in the extension of research and development is something that I'm really, really, really keen to make sure is done well.
Awesome. We cannot have enough people at the table helping us make decisions and using their voice really loudly in a way that has influence as well. Any questions for those that have joined us? Pop them in the chat. Let us know. We would love to answer some Q&A. I'm just speaking on your behalf, Pru, as well. Both Pru and I are pretty open to answering whatever questions you do have in regards to, mum work juggle, starting a business, family, daughter succession, farming, all of that. throw it at us. I mean, this is where you get the most value, I think, especially in these types of forums, is being able to ask a question that you might have sitting there. Just pop them in, and I'm sure Stacey and the team will let us know if anything pops up.
I'm probably a bit remiss too when you talk about leadership, Kimberley, is stuff that you do at the local level, which, you know, you sort of always fail to classify it as leadership. But when you live in a small country town, it's something that, as I run my business, I'm, doing a lot of community work and just constantly astounded at what we're expected to volunteer our time for that perhaps wouldn't happen in an urban environment. On the local town committee, I do some grant writing. We held an inaugural Dimboola Steampunk Festival earlier this year, which was a roaring success. So I was helping them out with some grant writing, and also have just started in Dimboola. I was travelling, pre-kids, was travelling a town over for roller derby training twice a week, and I've now started up a roller derby program here in Dimboola, which I'm really loving, as it's a sport that tends to attract women who've never had a fit in traditional sports before. We've just finished our first term of a beginners program as well, and pretty passionate about getting women into some kind of sport, and roller derby actually forms a really important part, as well as my professional mental health work that I've done. The sport and carving out some time to do that for myself is also really important. So, local leadership, we often don't think of it as leadership, but we all do so much within our communities that really, really comes under the leadership banner. So it'd probably be remiss to not talk about that and acknowledge all the phenomenal amount of volunteer work that mums do in their communities.
So much volunteer work. Roller derby. Oh my God, so amazing. Such a really left of field sport as well. And leadership, do you know what? It's been something that I've actually struggled to define over the years. So often you're asked, what is your version of leadership? How do you show leadership and all of that, especially in awards processes. And yeah, it's been one I've always struggled with. But when we talk about roles in the community, it's so funny. My daughter just started footy this year, under 12s. We're talking under 12E. And of course, at the start of the season, the guys come around, they're like, so who would like to be team manager? And I'm like, I want to move the names on that whiteboard. I want the power where I move stuff around. But again, I'm just seen as an admin person, and surely I'd be good at that because I'm a mum. And yeah, I'm female, but surprise to anyone that sends me an email, I'm useless at that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's just about trying to find those opportunities to get our foot in the door and show people that we are more than just admin, and then keeping that door open and reaching through and helping other women through the ranks as well. So, oh my gosh, I could talk about that whole industry for a little bit. Now, we do have a little chat. So one of the questions that have come through is that whether we have any advice for young women fairly new in their careers who are thinking about starting families, but nervous about what that might look like for their careers.
Have a really clear conversation about what your expectations are, before you go on mat leave. And it is a hard question to ask as well too, because you don't know, is my baby going to sleep, feed, have any health problems? Am I going to want to stay home? Am I going to be itching to get back to work quickly? I was reluctant to have any of those ideas, but I guess, I would talk about perhaps not in terms of the how, the what. And, if you want to come back at the level that you're at and, working on the same stuff that you're at, and you still want to be managing staff, make sure that's clearly on the table and document it all. Just get stuff in writing. Even if you send emails and you don't get any responses, I would be making it known that, I want to maintain my career. If that is indeed what you want to do, and, be clear about, I want this to look like some flexibility or working at home. And then keep those lines of communication open while you're on your mat leave, in terms of, once you're there, touching base regularly. Where are things at? here's where my thinking is at now. That would definitely be my suggestion. And keep a record in writing whenever you have a conversation. Just go, just putting this down, because I had, it was really disappointing for me. I had a number of friends not in agriculture, not necessarily in regional areas, who were like, having so much trouble getting back into work. And I'm like, this isn't going to be a problem for me. And then when it was, it felt even worse. So
yeah. Mine would be that you're not being difficult. So whenever you're going into sort of what you've suggested, Pru, is also have that mentality that I'm not being difficult. This is actually basic. This is what needs to happen, because I think sometimes we worry about, am I being too difficult? I'm asking all the questions. I don't want to make it hard for everyone. This is our right. We are allowed to ask the questions, and we're allowed to come back in where we want. Again, don't be hard on yourself, and don't try and make any decisions really early on in terms of when are you going to come back, because that piece you actually don't know until you have your little one and until you settle into that role. And then you might think, okay, yeah, this isn't for me, or my gosh, this is amazing. I never want to go back to work ever again. And just enjoy the time at home. My other thing is to find some mentors and to find women who have been there and done that before. So women who I think of is that we've featured in the magazine, women like Kate Mannix. She's the CEO of AFS and Associates. We've had a story on her. Like, I know that she's worked really hard. I think she's got 3 kids, but come back into the workforce and worked her way up. Who else? Circle In. I've been watching these ladies for the last, I want to say 5 years. Go and look them up. They are incredible. It's all about making a workplace better for both parents, both women, and both mum and dad. So take a look at them. They've got so much advice, and it's actually World Parent Day tomorrow in the States. I'm sure we can take that day for ourselves. But yeah, just to have a look at that and how that might work, and have a conversation with your partner. See if it is financially viable for you to role swap. Like, is that an option? Can you make that an option? Because it's incredible to have looked back and seen my 3 having had David as I suppose that's not sole parent, that leading parent, that stay-at-home parent as such. They've learned such different skills. And, admittedly, it's all about Transformers and Star Wars and all of those shows that I know nothing about and I'm not interested in ever. But look, it'd be great for them when they're on some sort of night quiz, some quiz night at school. But yeah, it's just about asking the question, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to having to know everything. Ask the question, get it in writing, find some mentors that have been there and done that. And yeah, never, ever think you're difficult. And if it doesn't work in your workplace, go and do it out on your own, because you'll make it work. And there's a whole community of people out there that want to support you. See if we've got any other questions. So we're getting close to time anyway. I'd just personally like to thank everyone for joining us today and having the chat, and especially you, Pru, for being so open about your experience. It's all about visibility. It actually gives other people permission to feel seen and heard. And it's just one of the most powerful tools we have in helping women advance in anything we do. So yeah, I really appreciate when there are people like you, Pru, and everyone else there that, just leads from the front and really speaks up about things. It makes it so much easier for the rest of us.
Oh, thank you for letting me talk about it. It's, as I said, it's particularly stuff with my dad has taken a long time to sort of unpack and understand. And the same with work as well too. But yeah, I worked really hard to not be bitter about it, but use it as an opportunity to go, all right, how can I stop other people from having to be in this situation? And unfortunately, that means I've got to talk about it.
You do. And I would also like to say there is something that I love to play. It's called 7 Degrees or 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. We won't play the actual game, but literally, like, anyone in Hollywood can match themselves back to Kevin Bacon in however many steps. I have a Bacon number of about 2 or 3. But what I wanted to say for you, Pru, is that you're from Dimboola. You're from around Dimboola. And yeah, I have family from that area. It's where I started my career as a journalist over in Nil. And I just love how small and connected the world is, especially when we talk women in business and women from regional and rural areas.
Absolutely.
Back to you, Stacey.
Thank you both so much. I think there's always so much value to hear the perspectives from other women, and really genuinely appreciate all that you've both talked about and shared today. I'm sure there's so much people will take away from this conversation. Also, thank you to our audience. We appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Please, if you ever have a suggestion on someone or a topic you want to hear from in our group, please don't be afraid to let us know. We'd love to hear from you. But now I guess it's, go on with your day. Have a great day, everyone.
Now, before you take off with all that inspiration and knowledge, we'd love for you to leave a review on our podcast so that we can continue to amplify women's voices in the media. And if you have any questions, we'd like to celebrate a win, you can always connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Oak Magazine AU. I'm so glad we've met and that now you know a friend of mine.